2021, the year that was in WA property. Welcome to episode 76 of Property Avenue WA. I'm TV, he's Oscar D'Souza, and this is your avenue to pretty much an independent, well, it is an independent, your independent avenue to property matters in Western Australia. And we like to be a bit informative, which is pretty relaxed. This is episode 76. And this is our season 2. So this will be, we'll have one more show before Christmas because we're now fortnightly, not weekly. And I did have someone inquire because they came across our podcast and our streaming, and they were most concerned because they couldn't find it because they thought we were on last week. And probably that's our fault because our marketing is probably one of those things that we're not all that good at, but we're working on it.
Who is our marketing department? Is that you?
Yeah, yeah, this little grey-haired man. Yeah. So tonight we've got a few topics. We're going to review what we've try and see if we can do a bit of a review of the past 12 months of our program and what we've perhaps got right, what we've got wrong, and some of the things we've come across. And as we just said before we started our broadcast, it's really interesting when you look back and you listen to some of the commentary.
Oh no, TV. We've lost TV. We've had another one of those communication problems, and we've lost TV. So I think what he was saying was it's really interesting when we look back, as I have done and as TV has done this just over the course of today, look back to earlier this year as to what were our predictions? What did we think was going to happen? I specifically look back to January, to the very beginning of January, the very start of 2021, where the market was at then. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that shortly, where the market was at then and what we thought was going to happen over the course of the year. Now, Tony has come back. Can you hear me, buddy? Oh, now you're on mute. Still can't hear you. Can't hear you. Can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me now?
Can. Got you.
Oh, I pushed the wrong button.
You pushed the wrong button.
I know. Yes. After 76 episodes, I accidentally pushed the wrong button. I thought, what have I done? I'm in Geraldton, and my setup's a little bit different to what it is in Perth. So I sort of accidentally pushed the wrong button, and I'm going, what have I done? So
I was just I just picked up from exactly where you got cut off, I guess, and let the listeners and or viewers know what it was that we were looking at when we've looked back earlier to the year, almost to the start of the year, and what we thought was going to happen, where our market was in the early part of the year, on the back of the final 6 months of 2020, which, as we know, blew everyone out of the water because we came out of this COVID period. I mean, COVID is secondhand, information, like it's just life today. But this time last year, it certainly wasn't life. We started to get a bit used to it, but we kind of hoped that it would disappear. But COVID's in the news and almost the front page story every single day at the moment. So COVID hasn't really gone anywhere. It really is part of our life. But then also WA real estate is. So I'll hand back to you, TV.
Yeah, and the other thing that I was going to mention with regard to our topics tonight is that, but also some really interesting statistics I got from AIC WA as far as what's been going on with transactions, and that's really intriguing for the month of November. And the other thing is we've been talking about scamming quite a bit over this season. There was another scam alert came out today, which is a little bit different to the norm. So I'll make mention of that because it's this time of the year, it is prolific, and certainly people need to be on their toes with regard to that. I also want to have a look at, just very briefly, it's more of a headline than anything, but I was really intrigued where I read a piece about the Labor and their intentions to establish a program for affordable housing. And we're talking 30,000 homes in 5 years.
Right. Okay.
Wow. So that was interesting. Regional rentals, are they sort of immune to rental spikes? And that's probably something that you could answer. And unfortunately, we were hoping to go and speak to a property manager in tonight's episode, but that's all good. We'll sort that out for next year. And are there pockets of in WA where there's really good value as far as property buying is concerned? I still think regional WA is good value. That's my opinion, but that's might be something if we get to. And there was also another piece that I saw whereby the top suburbs for residential investment in Australia, the top 20, WA have 3 of those. So I thought we might touch on those.
What are
and
they?
Of course,
what are the 3
I
suburbs
can.
in WA?
I can. If we'll jump the gun. Ellenbrook is number 6. Yanchep is rated 11, and Claremont is 16. So they're the 3 West Australian suburbs that are in the top 20 in Australia
For rentals.
For residential investment.
For residential investment. Right. Okay. Because I can see Ellenbrook. Yep. That makes sense to me, albeit that there's still a lot of land out there. Claremont, probably a no-brainer. It's one of Perth's Golden Triangle in the western suburbs, and it's a great spot for so many reasons. But largely, it's central to the city, to the coast, to the river. It's basically got everything, and there's also quite a bit of infrastructure going on around Claremont with the sinking of the rail line. But Yanchep is probably one that surprises me that it's in the top 20.
I wonder if the new rail to Ellenbrook is something that sort of obviously has an impact or makes a difference with regard to opportunity. My son lives out there, my daughter-in-law, and son live out at Ellenbrook and have done for some time, and they bought a home before Christmas. In fact, this time last year, 12 months ago, they'll be there. We'll be there. And great suburb, and what's developed out there in over the last few years or so is amazing. Great environment for young people.
It is.
So
it really is. I've got something topical with Ellenbrook, literally as we speak now. 3-4 months ago, I had probably my biggest home open, my biggest rental viewing of the year, and I think I had 48 groups of people through this one home that I had available for rent. Just on that, I'm talking. I'm talking with another landlord in the area that's thinking about selling their rental property, and I was giving them some advice as to what they might be able to sell it for in the current market. Now, the properties either side, both of them have sold recently, so that's quite good evidence as to what they might get for theirs. But in particular, the one on the left-hand side of theirs, which is very, very comparable in size and age, block size, and also it has a pool, that sold earlier this year, in February this year, for $385,000. In February this year, the new owners have bought it, and for whatever reason have had a change of life circumstance. Literally in this first week of December, that same property has sold for $480,000. In fact, when they put it on the market for $470,000, and so they bought it for $385,000 this year in February, and they put it back on the market at offers from $470,000. And I thought, that's a bit crazy. How do you expect that sort of growth in this current market? And they sold it for $480,000. They got $10,000 more. So there's something about Ellenbrook, TV.
So that's a $95,000 increase in less than 12 months.
Yeah. And if you look at that on a percentage basis, it's probably somewhere between 20 and 25%. Or, sorry, probably closer to 20%. But that's 20% in the same year. It's not even 12 months. It's within the same year.
And which sort of brings me back to what we're talking about reviewing. I think in one of our episodes early on in around about March or April, we made comment that there was talk about increase in values by 10 to 15%.
Yeah,
I think I think we were suggesting that we thought it'd be higher than that, and that's a classic example of more like 20% than 10 or 15. So hey, what we might do is quickly revert to your stats.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's a very, very important segment. That's if I can find I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what I've pressed.
Have you got my little Star Wars little intro there?
Yeah, well, I would do if I knew what I'm doing, but at the moment, yes, I've got it. I found it. Stop looking.
Oh, you've saved the day. Oh, you really have.
I knew you were excited. Over to OD and his stats on the rental and sales market. One of the most exciting segments of the whole program.
Look, I'll try and speed it up a little bit today, TV, just because I want to draw some comparison to what I researched that we were talking about earlier in the year. In fact, January this year, the very beginning of January, what our market was doing then and how our stats today relate to where we were at in the very, very beginning of this year. But back to our current day stats. Again, both our rental and sales market has been very, very consistent over this last 6 months. Both markets have been very, very strong. Sales just in the Perth area has been 1,060 over the last 7 days, 1,060 sales in the last 7 days. This time, 12 months ago, it was 1,011. So a very, very strong market over the last 12 months, really. Our normal market, as I always say, is typically 500 to 600 sales per week in Perth. But we've had a very strong market for a sustained period of time, and in excess of 1,000 sales each week is just basically what our market's been doing. Where there has been quite a significant change, though, over the last 3 or 4 months is in the available stock. So right now, there's 9,348 listings available in Perth. 12 months ago, that figure was 9,718. So it's a small drop. It's 3.8% of a drop as at today compared to where we were at this time last year. But this is going to be a really interesting stat, because what happened in November, December, January last year was we had quite a bit of commentary, and our show was just basically talking about the finish of 2020 and where we think 2021 is going to go. Our listings in January this year was at an all-time low, and something that our market hadn't seen for about 5 years. So we got down to about 8,200 listings. That's way too little listings for the amount of, for the size of Perth, and also for the number of buyers that are around. So between December and January, or December and February, our listings actually dropped around about 16%, because November, December, January, and then February into this year, our market was red hot. Absolutely red hot. And often things will slow down a little bit through the December, January period. But as we noted back then, people weren't able to go away on Christmas holidays. Businesses came out of COVID and starting to do well. JobKeeper, which is a term we haven't used in the last half of this year, but JobKeeper was around, and that really helped a lot of businesses stay open and support, the ability to keep staff on, and that the economy started to recover quite well. So our residential market, did really well. So we had a massive drop in listings because lots and lots of people were buying homes. So 8,200 we got down to, which is around about 16% less than where we currently sit. Our listings have now sprung back up, but our buyer activity and the number of transactions that we've got, we're still at 1,000 transactions every single week. So buyers have probably lost that fear of missing out because there's more properties available, but they're certainly not quiet. The home opens are still really busy. The volume of transactions really does speak for itself. We've still got a very hot real estate market here in Perth and in fact in WA. And I can't see any reason at all why that same level of momentum is going to slow down into the first 6 months of next year. I really think that we'll just keep going. Rentals wise, again, very, very consistent market in the rental space. Another 710 properties leased over the course of the last 7 days. This time 12 months ago, it was 720, so around about the same. But where there is a bit of a difference in our rental market compared to 12 months ago, right now, our listings, our supply of rentals is crisis point. It still is a crisis point. So that's 2,294 available rentals through Perth. But 12 months ago, that same stat was 2,927. So that's a 21.5% drop in available rentals. That's attributed to a number of reasons, but one is we've seen investors over the last 12 months sell a lot of those rental properties, and because they've been selling them to owner occupiers, they haven't actually come back into the rental market. So our typical rental population or our rental stock has definitely decreased over the course of the last 12 months. I'll touch on the investor interest in just a moment, but yeah. So where am I in terms of my stats? Our rental market 12 months ago, when we had a bit more stock, we were leasing 900 to 1,000 properties every single week. But over the last 6 months, we've seen that figure come down to 800 and pretty much down to 700 now. Not because our rental market has slowed down, but only because there just simply isn't the stock available to increase that stat. We're very much still in a rental crisis, and rents are going up. And so far as solving that rental crisis problem, I just don't know what the answer is. It's getting harder and harder for tenants. And as I said, rents are going up. Tony Bonner.
Can I ask a question, sir?
Yes, Mr.
I actually look back at, we talked about, we went between the two of us, we decided this episode we would go back and review a few past episodes earlier on the year. And one of those, I can't recall what episode it was, but one of them we discussed exactly this about rental. And then we thought, and certainly I think your commentary at the time is that we were thinking that with the homes that were being built, we'd expect those to be completed. And with that occurring, that would create, that would help the rental crisis with more properties coming back onto the market.
Yeah.
Is that the case? Have we seen that happening, or have we also seen a situation where properties haven't been completed and are not quite on the market like we thought because there's been quite a delay with the building side of things?
Yeah, good question, TV, and I'm glad you raised that. It's probably a bit of both. I know myself, just in terms of the owners and inquiries that I've been dealing with, that there are some of those properties where either those properties have been built and a couple of them will actually come straight onto the rental market, but the majority of them, bearing in mind that when those grants were issued, the requirements of those grants required the people to actually live in the properties themselves. So in fact, I've actually got a landlord that I'm thinking of that took advantage of the grant, moved out of their own property, which I now manage on their behalf, and they moved into the new one that was built. So I know that what we thought was going to happen, it is in part happening. That has increased the level of supply. It's just not reflecting in the stats. And the only reason why I can think that is the case is knowing that there are some of these new build properties that are improving the supply in the rental market. That seems to be counterbalanced by the number of properties that have continued to leave the rental market over the course of the last 12 months, because there's a number of investors, that mostly local investors, that have just had enough and are not prepared to hang on to the properties any longer. They've seen the real estate market recover to a point that they're happy with. They can get their money back. They can pay out their mortgages perhaps, and then they can wipe their hands of those investment properties. And then they'll just do whatever with, maybe they'll invest in the stock market or in cryptocurrency, or maybe they'll just buy a boat.
Maybe they might just retire.
They might retire, or they might, but when you look at SUVs, when you look at four-wheel drives, you look at caravans, you look at boats, all those sorts of lifestyle things, people, those markets and prices have really gone up. Demand has been huge over the last couple of years for the reason that, well, people can't go overseas anymore, or haven't been able to go overseas for the last couple of years. So the price of these boats, caravans, large SUVs and four-wheel drives have skyrocketed because demand has been so high. And so people have been cashing in and relieving themselves of the obligations and debt for their investment properties and living life and traveling around WA. So there probably is a bit of a silver lining. But yeah, so our rental market is remains in crisis. And around about, so this time last year, we had a supply of 2,800, and that's where our vacancy rate statewide was around about 1%. But as I said, as at now, it's 2,294, which is, around about a 20% drop in supply, and that's crisis point. The final thing I was just going to mention, though, is we were talking about over the course of this year, so who's buying these investment properties? Or is WA an attractive place for people to invest? There's no question from my experience, but also experience of other property managers and sales agents, that it's where all the investor interest seems to be coming from at the moment is definitely from the eastern states. There's a few people around WA that might buy investment properties at the moment, but dominating the play over there is definitely buyers in the eastern states, where they see WA as a really good investment opportunity. The fundamentals being that our prices are lower compared to over there. They know what our rental market is. They know that they're going to have a tenant and very limited vacancy. They can see rents are going up, and our interest rates remain really, really low. So it makes for a really good investment. That's certainly dominating play in our local investment market, the interest from the eastern states.
Yeah. And I'm little old me has observed that as well in with what I do. So I mean, that's just us. But certainly when you talk around and you see and you read, that certainly seems to be the case, and it makes sense. I mean, we made that comment in one of our episodes with regard to that was WA a place to invest, and most certainly it is. So it is. And I will go back to one of our episodes where we discussed the fact of the marketplace. So we might just go straight into our next segment about reviewing the market and what's been, what we've discussed in the past in previous episodes.
Yeah.
And one of the episodes we talked about, this was around about episode 50, so that was back in about April. That seems such a long time ago, doesn't it, April?
It does.
Where we were asked a question about, was the real estate market in WA sustainable? And we came back with the answer to say that we felt that, in fact, you were the one who answered to say that the market in the next 9 to 12 months, it's possible that will soften a bit. And because we were concerned the fact that there was no migration, there was no interstate migration, there was no international migration. Now that really hasn't changed much, but people are still buying from the East Coast. But of course, I'm still, even though I think a couple of episodes ago we made mention that there was some headlines suggesting that the market has flattened and it's quietened down and whatever. And I'm thinking, well, my office has quietened down. And the stats that I'll give you in a moment about November certainly shows things haven't slowed down. So my issue is that come next year, when that eventually does occur and we do actually get our borders open, I'd be intrigued to see what happens with our marketplace, because I think it's not going to be flattened. I think if we're busy now, I think we've got every chance of being busier because it's still so affordable.
Yeah, it is that part of the year, TV, where where we talk about predictions and just our predictions with obviously the appropriate disclaimers, which I'm sure you'll get to. You'll mention our disclaimer.
I haven't done my disclaimers, have I?
No? Well, do you want to do? Why don't you do our disclaimer before I say what I'm about to say in terms of a prediction for 2022?
So you want protection? Is that what you're saying?
I'd like some protection, please.
So our general advice disclaimer, and I will read it out because remember our podcast becomes available each Wednesday. In fact, not each Wednesday, because we're now doing our program fortnightly. And for those that have been inconvenienced, we do apologise, but we are finding it probably a little bit easier for us with our work and our commitments elsewhere. But however, we'll get to our disclaimer where the information on this podcast and this live stream is to be regarded as general advice. Your personal objectives, needs and financial circumstances were not taken into account when preparing this content. And talking about that little segment, I listened to one of the previous episodes way back, and I referred to it in one episode. I referred to it as contact. Another one I referred to it as contract, and another one I can't remember what I referred to, but
context.
I didn't get it right.
Context.
I don't know, but whatever it was, I didn't get it right for quite a number of episodes, but I'm working on it. We always advise and recommend you seek personal, professional, and financial advice tailored to your specific individual needs before making financial, property, and investment decisions. And we cannot emphasize that enough, be it your accountant, be it someone independent to assist you with whether you're going to be buying or you're selling or whatever. And I'm not just talking about the real estate agent, but sometimes it's important before you get a contract that you ensure that you've got your structures right. We've discussed this in past episodes. So there's so many reasons that you just don't take things for granted. And we've had a couple of issues that I have been addressing in the last week to 10 days that have been quite complicated. And unfortunately, some of it was due to the fact that they perhaps didn't dot the I's and cross the T's before they signed a contract. So it's really, really important because it can be a costly exercise.
Yeah.
Over to you, my friend.
In terms of what I was going to, thank you, TV. In terms of what I was going to mention about, okay, so what do I think will happen? This is me. What do I think will happen in our market in 2022? And TV, you mentioned migration. So that's something that has not been a factor at all in the last 18, almost 24 months now, for obvious reasons. What I do know is that our market over the course of this year has been very, very consistent, very, very consistently strong. Both our markets, the rental market and the sales market, metro and regional, have been really, really strong and consistent. There's been so much activity, and I really can't remember a year like what 2021 has been. I also don't see any reason why why it will soften, why the foot will come off the pedal as we move into 2022. I agree with you, TV, that I think that if anything, it will become stronger. I think there will be a greater level of demand because there is going to be a migration factor coming in into 2022. There's going to be more people coming into the state that are going to be looking to buy properties. There's going to be more people coming into the state that are going to be looking to rent properties. So I think the owner-occupier market fundamentals are strong. I think that the investor market fundamentals are strong. Interest rates probably won't change at all over the course of next year. They'll probably remain exactly the same. Our rental crisis can't possibly go away in the next 12 months. It simply can't go away. So that side of things are going to stay strong. And our prices, the prices is probably the only area where I do see a bit of movement. And I think there's going to be an upward swing or a continuing upward swing with prices. So the affordability of WA real estate will become less attractive or less affordable, but comparatively, it'll still be very affordable. So I'll say, I think that I think 2021 will record that we actually have had a solid level of growth across the entire market. There's some areas of Perth and some regions that have done better than the others, but everywhere I think has been really positive. And by that, I mean, most areas would have experienced somewhere between 5 and 10% growth. And the areas that have really shone would be between 10 and 20% growth. And there might even be some that are a bit in excess of 20% growth. I just think that is going to continue. I think we're in for a really, really strong 2022, very similar to what we've had in 2021. But if anything, there'll be more demand than what we've seen in 2021.
Yep,
that's what I think.
Yep, and I'm totally in support of that. I see no reason for it to be otherwise. And yeah, I'm with you completely with that. I just don't see. I know there's different economists, and we're not economists, but it's just our observations. And I'm not suggesting we're always right, but yeah, I just can't see why. And which I will digress a little bit with regard to with what you're saying, as to the statistics that I've got. So this is based on this document. These statistics we are accessible via the Landgate, which is the West Australian Titles Office, and so the EASs is what we do. So settlement agents and lawyers, when they do a settlement, have to lodge what they call an EAS, and it's an electronic system which is advising the change of ownership and so that goes to the respective shire and the Water Corporation and the state Office of State Revenue for land tax. That has gone significantly through the roof. So that is, for November alone, it is 14.8% up on October, right?
Wow.
So that's inquiries. Now, those inquiries occur. They don't necessarily occur with a transfer between related parties or a marriage split or things of that nature, but this is more will identify sales and purchases, right? So that's up 14.8% on October.
That's 1 month.
Yes, that's in a month. The new subdivisional lots are up 65% from October.
Wow.
65%. Transfers, so that's transfer of property from one party to another, it was up 8.5% in November from October. So that's in a month, right? Total lodgements, so that's documents that are lodged through Landgate, so that can be transfers, etc. That is up 7.2%. Which something that was very interesting when you consider subdivisional lots, new strata lots were down 14.8% in October. From October.
New strata lots.
Yep. So units or whatever, but don't forget these things take time. So they may have gone through and then November not to be, but that's still a significant drop. But mortgages are up 3.2%. So that's mortgage documents.
So question for you, TV. When you're saying up and down, right? When you're quoting these statistics and you're saying up and down, these up and down figures are solely based on the month immediately preceding.
Yes. So this is the activity. This is the activity in November compared to the activity
in October.
This is in October. So this is property activity through Landgate, and every property, no matter what it is in West Australia, the documentation, any changes, anything that happens to a property, all those documents go through the WA Titles Office, which is called Landgate. So these are all the statistics. So this is what someone says to me, "How busy are you guys?" This is a classic example. If there's a settlement agent or a lawyer who's not busy when they're attending to conveyancing, then you need to question it, because there's no way in the world that But the other interesting part in compared to that is that when you compare November activity compared to November last year, it is up. The EASs are up 9.7%. So the inquiries, this is a change of ownership. The new subdivisional lots. Now this is interesting. Compared to the same time last year, it's down 36%. Right? So subdivisions aren't quite as proactive, but there's a lot of things they've got to do. Strata lots are down 42%. Now, I found that really interesting, that strata lots are down that much, but maybe that's because it's difficult for developers and getting access to land.
Well, the other thing that I'm thinking is that we've got to allow for the fact that in that from March onwards last year, that's when that construction sector stimulus was provided, and that was massive, and builders just went crazy, which means land developers went crazy as well. So would it make sense that given that those grants have finished, that we're going to see a drop in the land activity, because we've definitely seen a drop in the land activity in sales compared to late last year? I think that makes sense. 42%
is a big drop.
Yeah, it's massive.
That's a big drop. Transfers are up 11% on the same time last year. So that's transfers. So this is November to November. Okay, so we've had a few months after COVID, and then we've come through to November in comparison to November 2020 to November, and then lodgements are up 18%. So from this time last year, mortgages are up 29% from what they were last year. 29%. So this is WA, and don't get confused with Australia, because remember this program is WA and these statistics are WA. But this is the number of documents lodged for the month, and this is not private and confidential information. So this information is there were 35,749 documents were lodged through Landgate, the WA Titles Office, in the past month for the month of November.
Yeah.
That is huge. And
Yeah.
on average, over the last, since July, on average, it's around about the 35,000 mark. But 35,000 is pretty much what they would consider a record over the last 8, 9, 10 years.
Yeah.
It's massive. So
TV,
they're
we
busy,
can,
busy the bees.
so far as our predictions as to what might happen next year, economists or not, or commentators or not, one thing that we can't ignore is the stats that you just read out. We can't ignore the stats, the anecdotal evidence that I talk about, as to what's transpired in the week. So we can do a bit of this and try and work out which way the wind's going. We can talk to our Uber driver, we can chat to our hairdresser, and we can chat to people at school pickup. We can do all that, but no matter what, it's always an opinion to try and predict the future, and everyone will probably have their own so far as real estate is concerned. But our stats don't lie, and our stats over the course of this year have shown growth. They've shown consistency. They've shown really, really high levels of activity. And I just don't know what the threat is to that going into 2022. I just can't think of what is going to threaten that. All I can see is reasons why things will get busier. So I think if I was a betting man, and sometimes am, I'd be placing just about all my chips on the fact that it's just going to be a very, very strong 2022. I don't see anything crazy like what we saw in 2006, 2007, where we saw that, we came out of 2003 and 2004, and then 2005, 6, 7, right up to the GFC, absolutely went, and I'll get my hand on the screen, exponentially went bang like that. I don't think that's what we're going to see, and I really hope we don't see that. But I do think that we're just going to be a steady, sustainable, a very positive level of growth.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I think the fact is, again, like we emphasised last week, just stand your ground. I've got an issue. In fact, I've talked about timeframes quite often on this podcast, but please be careful when it comes to timeframes with your settlement, and more importantly, your finance, because those figures are telling you that everybody is very, very busy, and you've got to be blind Freddy if you think that. And I don't care what real estate agent is or wherever it is that tells you, oh no, we'll get this done in 20 days, etc. I'm sorry, folks, but those figures tell you that everybody is super busy, as are the bankers, as are the finance brokers, etc. Those people as are property managers. And so your timeframes and your contract is super important. And my son's contacted me the other day. He's really concerned because suddenly the bank now wants some more paperwork, and they've only just got to his finance application, and his finance is due in the next couple of days. And they're still chasing stuff. They still want it now, coming back in for more stuff. So I said from the outset, I don't think it's going to be enough time. It's simply not. And here we are. So it's something you need to be careful of, because it is busy. And when it's busy, people try and push these things through, and we all get a bit panicky. And I'm looking after a young chap at the moment, and it's really important that we tick a few boxes. And of course, in his case, he's got a rental property that he's got to get out of. My son's the same. They've got to get out of a rental property. So they've got to try and get that timing right. And if you don't get that right, you could be in a very difficult position, and it could cost you. So you need to be careful. Hey, so are you good with that? Is there anything else you'd like to discuss about our previous episodes? Any other reviews you've identified?
Not really, mate. I'm sure there's stuff, but I think
I will touch on one. Okay. In April, episode 48, I think it was, which was around about April 15. It was a bit of a somber episode because it was Cyclone Seroja had gone through the area. And I just thought I'd touch on that to all those people out there, be it in Three Springs, or be it in Perendry, Northampton, Kalbarri, and lots of other areas, all that around, and the farming fraternity. And I'm quite sure that, in fact, I know for a fact there are still people that we forget this. We forget it very quickly, but there are people that are not going to necessarily have, we all get excited about Christmas, and I'm sure they will enjoy Christmas, but those people are still people without roofs, people are still out without their homes being rebuilt, etc., etc. So we wish them all well. But that was April 15, episode 48, and I thought I'd touch on that. And please think of those people, and if we can help in some way, please do so. So, and they're not the only ones. There was the bushfires, remember? And we made mention about that, and there's been a range of other, and of course we're going to enter into that season again where there's bushfires and all those. It's just part of WA. I'm in Geraldton at the moment, and today I don't know whether it actually got to what they were predicting, but it was pretty damn warm. It was 34 degrees at 8:30 this morning, and it was predicted to be 42. And I can assure you I turned my air conditioner on and sat in my office and did what I had to do. But it gets pretty warm, and my God, mate, the wind. My golf ball was going sideways on Saturday.
Is that because of the wind? Because of the wind, do you think?
No, I think it's got a lot to do with the way I play golf. Hey, listen, the other thing that I thought was important that I'd raised tonight was I was brought to my attention today from our the West Australian Institute of Conveyancers. They brought to our attention a phishing scam alert. And we mentioned scamming quite a bit on this program, and particularly this time of the year, be very, very careful. But please, I won't touch on it, but phishing is sort of like it's a scamming system that they impersonate the settlement agent or the lawyer, and they alter the email address, etc., and then they'll tell you to put money into an account, and it's not the settlement agent's account, it's someone else's. Please, do not. No settlement agent or no lawyer should be providing you with account details. And if they are, then you need to ring them, because do not just accept an email. And there's some pretty ugly scams going on, particularly with emails, so that various hackers. So please be careful. If you're doing a settlement, or you're buying a property, or you're selling a property, please, I can't advise you enough, and we'll put this on our Facebook page. But they're becoming very, very clever with their interceptions, and we certainly advise our clients about not that we don't provide bank account details, but it's something that I just can't emphasize enough. It's really quite scary, and this particular hack is something new. So they are getting into a PDF attached email, and they are changing that. So you need to be very careful. Hey, the other thing that I was interested about was what we should do is we'll divert to.
Are we going to do what's on the notice board?
No, we're going to just wait. Relax, okay? Relax. We're going to do. I've got some.
I'm really pretty relaxed. I'd be more relaxed if we did what's on the notice board.
Well, just wait a minute, okay? Oh, don't you love it?
Cool. That's so cool.
Love it?
Yeah.
This is all about property headlines, and not all about, but one particular, and it's relative to what we've been talking about, is one particular article, and I'm madly been trying to flick through to find the article now. But not only we're getting into Christmas mode, but we're now getting into election mode, and the Labor Party have advised that they're going to introduce a program with 30,000 homes, which will be a program that will introduce 30,000 homes over the next 5 years to ease the across the board in Australia. I'm sorry. Don't wish to be cynical, and I don't wish to be a pessimist, and I don't wish to be Mr. Negative, but really 30,000 homes in 5 years to ease the property. I'm sorry. I just have a huge problem with that.
Yeah. So is there any detail around that? Like any detail at all as to how they could deliver that? Have you looked into that, TV?
Watch this space, and I will look into that for you and ensure that we may touch on that on our last program, which is going to be the 21st of December.
Yeah. Okay.
But I just found it somewhat, I don't know, far-fetched, I suppose, to think that is even realistic. When you've got
reckless, isn't it? Reckless.
It is reckless, because I think the fact is that, I mean, if they achieve it, fantastic. But
Yeah,
seriously,
but how? Like
that's my point. You've already got builders that are going under because they can't get materials. They're struggling to keep up with the demand at the moment. I mean, and we're going to do, on top of that, we're going to do 5,000. We're going to build 6,000 homes a year, affordable homes a year over the next 5 years.
6,000.
Well, that's what it worked out to be, 30,000 in 5, and it won't start straight away.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, Matt, I haven't even pulled it apart.
I'm just surprised there hasn't been any questions regarding that, but I will look into it because I'm just thinking you've put that in the paper, and sadly I've lost track of. I've got that many headlines, but yeah, it's one of those ones that I'm going, ugh. The other article that I read was that regional WA or regional property, and I'm assuming that's perhaps the same in WA. Is it immune to the rental spike? Now you're the property manager. You're the property manager guru. These regional rentals, are they? I mean, we know what the situation is with rentals in the metro area. In the regional areas, are they immune to spike?
No, not at all. In fact, they've experienced exactly the same conditions, market conditions in terms of demand and supply as what the Perth metropolitan area has. In fact, I didn't touch on it, but often we have a look at what's going on in Geraldton, in the Geraldton rental space. And as at today, there is 40 properties available in Geraldton. So for anyone who's in Geraldton that's a tenant looking around to maybe perhaps move into a rental property or to sell their property and rent for a while or move into Geraldton, there's a grand total of 40 properties for the whole of Geraldton, which includes units, villas, houses, family homes, executive properties. Like, it's hardly any TV. And you recall stats, and back in my day in Geraldton, we needed 160 to 180 homes. That's the level of supply that we need just to try and meet the demand. And when the market was oversupplied, it was 350 to 400. So to have 40 in Geraldton, and I know Margaret River is the same. I know that the rental market is, I was up in Port Hedland at the end of last week, and I know there's one rental property that the agency had on their books. So no, they're not immune to the spike, not at all. There is that perceived level of greater risk when you go to regional areas. And the reason being, when things change economically in the regions, like if it's a mining town or if it's a fishing town or a farming town, if it's heavily reliant on a certain type of industry and for some reason that industry has a bit of a downturn economically, the demand for housing typically will fall. So there is but I guess that's also reflected in the sales market as well. Regionally, typically is seen as a bit more risky than the major city, being Perth. But so far, it's experienced the very, very similar conditions to what Perth has.
Another headline that I found somewhat disturbing, and again, it gets back to the housing crisis, but the headline was, "Housing crisis forces women back to violent relationships and a risk to their lives." And they were talking about the fact that the situation is causing a bottleneck situation, refuge for women not being able to leave to go to more long-term housing due to affordability and competition. And I thought, wow, you don't think of those things. You don't always think about those scenarios, and that's quite disturbing to see that what that does. And that was an article that I think was in West Australia over the last week or so. And I thought that's worth being aware of. And I believe the WA government's affordable housing announcement in September, which reflects the single largest investment in social housing in the state's history, $875 million, including the state budget, will deliver more social housing throughout the state, which will help support many vulnerable people. But that's well and good, but when's that going to happen? And in the meantime, what are these women in particular having to put up with? And putting themselves at risk. So the quicker that's done, the better, in my opinion, because that's quite disturbing.
It's a very real threat, TV, and there's been a great awareness of it over the course of the last 12 months, basically since COVID. There was a change to the Residential Tenancies Act, and the amendment was called the Family Domestic Violence change to the Act, which basically gave people that experience any form of family domestic violence the ability to break lease at basically very minimal cost to themselves and give people that are experiencing the family domestic violence and abuse an out of their leases. But again, the problem is that's great that they are provided an alternative and an option to get out of the rental property. But where are they going to go? Like, it's not like they, the rental market is what we said about, it's in crisis mode anyway. So it's not like they've got a ton of options. Do they go to family? There's a very slim supply of refuge type facilities. And the other thing being as well, COVID has created stress on households, stress on schooling, stress to do with employment and housing affordability, and just disposable income coming into the house. People have been in the house more, they've been drinking more, not coping well with stress, and that's where you see mental health start to we've certainly seen mental health take a dive over the last couple of years, and we've also seen a spike in family domestic violence issues. So it's very, very sad. It's very real. And at the very least, we've got that awareness on it. But so far as housing is concerned, there's not really a quick solution there.
No, not at all. The other thing is that we touched on, are there pockets of property value? Have we got time to do that tonight, or should we perhaps bring that forward to next week?
Well, I'm looking at the time. It's 52 minutes, mate, and we've got
a couple of things to do, so we might hold off on that and do that, carry that over for the next week. And I made mention about the top suburbs for residential investment in Australia, which we've already touched on, so we've covered that. I think. Oh, look, one other thing. I've got a little piece that really I told you. More. Yeah, there is. I found out something. This is so intriguing, and I don't know how many people are listening to this or how many people will listen to the podcast, but
I'm listening.
This blew me away that today we had an inquiry from our office from a client who received an invoice, a land tax bill. She's an old lady from Office of State Revenue for land tax of over $8,000. So she contacted us, or she contacted her daughter or whoever it was, who then contacted us, most distressed about this situation. The other part was that the property, she wasn't aware that she owned this property. So we made some inquiries, firstly with the Office of State Revenue, and they couldn't give us an answer because they were relying on, well, no, that's the right name and that's the right property, and going, well, this person doesn't own this property. So we then made some inquiries with Landgate. And now we've got to ID people and go through all the processes, and they won't accept any of our documents unless we've done all the proper IDs and all this sort of caper. We find out that if they come up with a property, a transfer for Oscar de Souza, they don't actually check to see which Oscar de Souza. There might be two Oscar de Souzas. So suddenly, this little old lady has got another property in her name. And Landgate,
it's not actually
and it's
hers.
Not hers. It happens to be another Oscar de Souza. And they just don't do any form of proper check to see whether it's the right one. And yet we're required to do so. I find that absolutely staggering. And we went back to State Revenue to address, and they said, oh, yes, that's quite often because Landgate don't. I'm going, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. Here's our Titles Office body, and we've got two Oscar de Souzas. We don't check to see which one it is when we've provided all the ID to confirm, and they won't allow our documents to be processed without that information.
That's just wrong on so many levels. I mean,
I'm going to follow it up tomorrow.
The lady who owns the property that didn't know it, and she gets given a land tax bill. What about the person that thought he owned it but then doesn't really own it?
Oh, that's my point. I said to the girls, let's go and check out and see how many properties we own, and we'll go and knock on the door and say, sorry, Oscar, you don't own that property, we do.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to inquire about it, but that's true. That's not mythical. That is not TV making up. That's
a shocking story, mate.
It is a shocking story. I just was blown away. Unfortunately, I didn't find out about it until late this afternoon, and I was busy doing other things. But I certainly intend to inquire about it. I certainly intend to follow it up, and because I was even more staggered with the answer that was given to us by State Revenue, Office of State Revenue, to say, "Oh yes, this is what they do." And I'm thinking, hang on, this is a very relaxed attitude for something such a big deal.
Yeah.
And, you know, this little old lady, it scared the living daylights of her. She gets an invoice and a demand letter to say she owes $8,000 in land tax. What for? There's so many, as you say, there's so many different levels. That is just spooky. Hey, let's do something a little bit more positive. I've got your favourite segment. Oh, you know what? I've done that wrong. I'll do this again. I've got a new one. Deary me. We're mad. Hey, what's on the notice board? Well, we do know that's what's coming up. That's Christmas coming up, so we're all busy with that. And have you done your Christmas shopping?
Yeah.
Me too. We have. Jude and I.
We went together, didn't we? Yeah, we went together.
You're such a fibber. You've got to look after those little girls of yours and that beautiful wife of yours. And the other thing is, I've got something really big. This will really intrigue you. December 14, there's a very important wedding anniversary. My little princess. Oh. Yep. So next Tuesday, we won't be able to do a podcast next week because I'm going to do something special. Yeah. So that's next. Yeah, I think it's.
Oh, I know what we could do, TV, because that's your wedding anniversary, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about we do have the podcast next week, and let's have Jude as our guest, and I can ask all very non-invasive questions about how you had such a successful marriage, and how has she managed to change you over the years and mold you into the perfect TV that now sits beside me. What about that? But you'll give it some thought, hey?
Yeah, okay. I'll think about it.
Yeah.
All right. I've just been told as well that our one of our fabulous followers, one JB, the manager of the Geraldton Community Bank, the music really reminds him of Benny Hill.
Yeah. Oh, it is. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is Benny Hill's. It is Benny Hill.
Anyway, so that's
ironical, isn't it? Because there's nothing Benny Hill about you and me and this show.
No. The other thing being is December 16, very exciting if you're a school kid, because that's the end of the school year for 2021. So some kids have finished already. And of course, Levers has already been. Did you go to Levers?
I was a toolie.
A toolie?
Yeah.
Hi, Gramps. So that's December 16th, but this will excite you. On Sunday, December the 5th, but gone, it was World Soil Day.
Oh, I knew it was World Soil Day. Yeah.
You want to know? You don't want to know what World Soil Day is about?
I could make some stuff up.
No. Listen, this is sensible. The campaign aims to connect people with the soil and raise awareness of their critical importance in our lives of soil.
That's fantastic. Hey, just on that note, did you know on the 21st of December, December 20, I've done some research on the 21st of December is World Dedicated Property Management Day. Would you believe 21st of December is World Dedicated Property Management Day? So I'll tell you a bit more about that in our next show, TV. But I kid you not, I've done my research.
That sounds like self-promotion to me.
I understand it sounds that way, but I promise you that's not what I'm doing. It is World
Dedicated Property Management. Anyway, December the 11th, which is a few days away, is the Manjimup Cherry Harmony Festival. And that's fair dinkum. So food and all that sort of stuff. So if you're anywhere down south, if you're travelling, make your way down to Manjimup for the Cherry Harmony Festival. December the 11th. That's on. So the 11th is what? Saturday? 7th today?
Yes.
8th.
Saturday.
Yes. So this Saturday, Manage 'em Up. If you're travelling around and you're listening to the podcast or you're watching the live stream, Manage 'em Up Cherry Harmony Festival. So, and then December the 4th on Saturday, just gone, it was Santa's List Day. I haven't got the letter in list day. It gets all his lists for all the letters for all the little boys and girls. So you better get your Santa letter happening because he's doing his list at the moment, Santa. So there you go. All right. Just thought I'd let you know. I think we're pretty much done for the night. We've had.
Have we got a great question?
Can I tell you? No, I have, but I can also tell you we had a lovely lady, Julia, and we're going to speak to Julia. Hopefully, get hold of her next year. When we do our next season, we've got one more program which will be very, very Christmassy, or at least that's our plan. That'll be on Tuesday fortnight, so that'll be the 21st of December.
You've told
me Julia, she's a lady that now follows us and wanted to know about our program, etc., etc. And she set up a business to be a buyer's agent in the Geraldton area.
Fantastic.
So I've got her info and got her details, and I thought that'd be nice. We'll get her on and have a chat with her at some stage. And I'm also going to have a look at something that I think is really important. We forget sometimes, and I've been doing it at my house of late, and I've had a young friend of mine helping me with that. Maintenance on your home. Really, really important. We forget about those things. We spend a lot of money buying a property, but it's really important for the upkeep and doing those things. Yeah. So I thought I'd get Glenn, who's a friend of mine, and his partner, his helping hand, Jess, and they became aware of our podcast and whatever. And I said, hey, guys, what's your thoughts about having a chat, and we'll discuss, and we might get him on intermittent stages throughout the year about the sort of things that you should look after and do as it comes to your maintenance of your home, which I think is really important. And we forget that sometimes. We do all the garden things, but there's other things like screws in your tin roof that rust and then ruin your tin roof. So all those sort of things that we'll touch on. So there you go. Hey, I think so. That'll be exciting. And we'll try and get Laura on when we get a chance. So that was here it is. I found that article about the Labor Party. They pledged to establish a Housing Australia Future Fund in government, which will build 30,000 social and affordable homes across the country over 5 years. I don't have any other detail, but I'll come back to you about that. So
they probably don't either.
Oh, don't be nasty. Right.
That's very typical.
So don't forget, tomorrow our podcast will be available for those that may be wanting to know, and I'll keep our post going, and we will do a program again. But we are going to go to Oscar's favourite segment, the if question. For those that don't obviously listen to the podcast and see these two noddies bouncing away, I don't think we'll change those. I think we've got to keep those now. I was going to upgrade them, but I don't think we'll. I think we'll keep the thing.
I don't think that can be upgraded.
Oh, no, you love it. The if question. I've got two. Well, I got excited. And I thought,
if and the first one is, if I had two if questions, what would they be?
Ask? Okay. The first one I thought I initially did this because of the big lotto win. How exciting was that? The $55 million win.
That is one of the
$80 million win to 55 ladies. That's
one of the best news stories of the year.
Wasn't
definitely.
It was, and the part that I loved the best was the fact that how they reacted. It was so natural. Yeah. And there was one young girl that's got a bit of an illness, and it was just special. And the lady that walked in had no idea what was going on. Walked into the gym and everyone celebrating or whatever. I just thought it was that was very, very special. I just hope they are protected and they get the right advice, because there's something like, I read a statistic where there's something like 95% of lotto winners blow it in the first 5-6 years.
Right.
Big lotto winners, yeah. So I've had a couple of clients that have won lotto and been really, really clever with it. But I just hope that they, get the right. Once again, it gets back to our disclaimer: get the right people to look after you, because it is a lot of money, and you just hope. But it was a great story. It really tickled my fancy. So my if question is: if you won lotto, what would you do?
What would I do?
Yeah.
It's a really good question, because I talk about what it is that I do with myself day to day anyway, in terms of work wise and all that. And, if you want a load of would you retire and would you go and buy a big house and all that? My answer is no, TV. My answer is I'd just keep doing, I honestly would keep doing what it is that I'm currently doing, because I love what it is that I'm doing. I'd use that money to make sure that, we don't have any debts and, find a way to invest, a large portion of it, make sure we've got some money to of the benefits of, to improve life, and maybe there's more holidays and that sort of stuff. But ultimately, I'd just keep doing what it is that I'm doing, because I actually really like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
What about you,
mate? I'm different because I'm 20 years older than you, and so that would probably help
20?
me to.
You look 30.
Why don't you go and get stuffed? Anyway, so the situation is that I definitely probably. I think there'd be a no-brainer that I'd be retiring, probably more fully than what I would hope to do. But I would certainly still enjoy doing what we're doing, like the podcast, and probably spend some more time doing that, a bit more planned, because I love doing this stuff. But I'm a bit like you. I'd certainly, because I've got 3 grown-up boys, and I'd probably try and assist them in some way, depending on what it was that I won, just to help them now rather than later. And then hopefully the borders open up, and we could enjoy ourselves a little bit. We could celebrate our wedding anniversary. But
that'd be good. Maybe buy yourself some golf lessons.
Well, yeah, I've got to do that. Yeah. So the other question was Christmas related. If you could celebrate Christmas overseas, and of course we can't, but if we could, where would you choose to go and why?
Yeah, good. That's a really cool question. So a couple of nights ago, myself and my wife and my 2 little girls went for a drive, and we found out on the website as to where's some good streets in the Perth metro area where people have really got stuck into making their streets very Christmassy, and Christmas lights displays and all that. And we found a place in Thornley. So we went for a drive out there, and there was one house in particular. Inside the window they didn't just have all the lights and everything on the front of their house and the lawn and everything, but inside the front lounge window, they actually had a setup of like a village with snow everywhere. And it was such a fantastic, not an image, it was such a fantastic model of a snow-filled community during Christmas time. So I really don't care where, mate, but if I could have a white Christmas with that sort of, with my family, I'd go anywhere I could find that. I would love to, and I'm going to do it. Make sure I have at least one white Christmas with my family.
My youngest son did that. He went to New York a few years back. His girlfriend, when I say girlfriend, a very close friend of his that they've known each other since they were 6 years of age. In fact, he was the man of honour. He was her man of honour at her wedding. So that's how close a relationship they have. But they went to New York. But certainly, if that opportunity arose for me, we would be on the plane in one foul swoop to go to London to share Christmas with our son, who we haven't seen for 2 years. Luke over in London, but that certainly would be. And I think about a lot of those people, even interstate people, that can't share Christmas together because of these border lockdowns. It's very hard. But I just thought it'd be an appropriate question to ask.
Yeah, great question,
mate. We're done and dusted. For those that are watching, thank you for following us. Please pass on and let people know that we do exist. Please let them know that it's informal, but we try to be informative. We try to be relaxed. We try to have a bit of fun. We get guests on at different episodes, and we'll certainly plan for that for next year. But we've got one more episode, and then we're going to have a little Christmas break. But please join us. Please pass on. Our podcast comes out tomorrow on Wednesdays, and all the past episodes, if you want to look back and listen to some of them that's informative. And we'll be able to, if you go to Buzzsprout, you can actually get chapters. So you can actually do, rather, if you don't want to listen to the whole lot, I'm now creating chapters of each episode, so you can listen to 2 and 5 minute segments rather than having to sit. But I spoke to a young lady today, and she said, how long's your podcast go for? I said, well, we initially started on 30 minutes, but we went to 45. Now we do an hour. So I just love podcasts that go for an hour or more because it's more enjoyable. So so we are available on Instagram. We're available on Twitter. We're available on Facebook. And whatever you want to do. If you want to contact us, you want to send us some questions, you got some ideas. We've actually had someone send us some ideas for some topics to discuss in future episodes. So we'll follow that through. But thanks a million. Have a great couple of weeks, and we look forward to being here again. You can always access us through our social media, but we look forward to speaking to you again in a couple of weeks' time. Take care, stay safe, and happy buying or selling.